Okay, I'm sitting back down with Jeremy Gorner. Jeremy, can you please remind my audience who you are and what you do?
Hi there. I'm Jeremy Gorner. I'm a reporter with the Chicago Tribune from our Springfield bureau at the Illinois State Capitol. I cover the Illinois General Assembly and Governor J.B. Pritzker. I've been covering this beat for a little over 3 years now, um, but I've been at the Tribune for close to 20 years. Prior to covering state government and politics, I covered the Chicago Police Department for many years. So I covered crime and criminal justice and police accountability, and other issues related to all that. So yeah.
Well, hey, thanks for sitting back down with me today. And, the reason I thank you for sitting down on such short notice. I saw that you just broke news with the Chicago Tribune. The federal appeals court ruling allows Illinois gun ban to remain in place. Before we talk about that article, and maybe you'll just do that naturally by talking about the article, I just thought we'll give background and then maybe talk about the latest news.
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool.
So, in January of last year, the Illinois General Assembly passed a sweeping ban on certain high-powered semi-automatic guns. This includes firearms, rifles, and handguns, and high-capacity ammunition magazines. So this is commonly referred to as the state's assault weapons ban, or the Protect Illinois Communities Act. Um, so this basically was spurred by a mass shooting that happened during the Fourth of July parade in 2022 in Highland Park, Illinois. There were 7 people who were killed in that mass shooting, along with dozens more who were injured. And one of the guns that was used, or the gun that was used by the alleged perpetrator in that shooting, is indeed one of the guns that is banned, because of this assault weapons ban. But as this law came to fruition, gun rights organizations made it clear that they felt that the law was unconstitutional and that they were going to do everything they could to try to overturn it. And that's exactly what some of these groups, like the National Shooting Sports Foundation and the Illinois State Rifle Association, to name a few, have done. They've been fighting the Illinois Attorney General's office tooth and nail, trying to overturn this law. The gun rights groups have filed lawsuits, um, and so far, the state Attorney General Kwame Raoul and Governor Pritzker have so far prevailed in these lawsuits for the most part. But where we're at now is that there was one lawsuit in southern, that was filed in federal court in Southern Illinois, where this judge out of East St. Louis ruled the assault weapons ban unconstitutional. So because of that, the case is now before the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals in Chicago, where Attorney General Raoul and Governor Pritzker have appealed. It's the second time around that this legal challenge to the gun ban has gone to the Seventh Circuit. Um, Last year, uh, maybe just a couple of months, I want to say, after the law went into effect, a lawsuit was filed immediately, within days, maybe a week or so, um, pretty close to the time that it went into effect in January 2023. So this same judge, Stephen McGlynn in East St. Louis, he ruled rather, he ruled in favor of these gun rights groups in their bid to temporarily block enforcement of the law. In, I want to say, April of last year, these gun rights groups sought um, basically a temporary injunction to, halt enforcement of the law while their lawsuit progresses against the state of Illinois. So after McGlynn's ruling, though, that case went to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals in Chicago, and the Seventh Circuit overturned it and basically said that the state of Illinois was within its right to do what it did by passing the assault weapons ban. So now the case is basically, you know, make a long story short, the case is basically now being decided on its merits, which means it's at the stage where the courts will now decide permanently whether the law should be in place or not. So so the case went back to McGlynn's courtroom in East St. Louis, and on November 8th, less than a month ago, he once again ruled the law was unconstitutional. Uh, basically saying that the law violated the Second Amendment, right to bear arms, and now the case is before the Seventh Circuit again, to decide the case on its merits. And basically, what you saw yesterday, Cole, is that this appeals court panel in the Seventh Circuit yesterday. So basically, what McGlynn's ruling did on November 8th was that not only did he rule the gun ban unconstitutional, saying that it violated the Second Amendment, but his ruling also declared the law unenforceable after 30 days. So what happened is the Attorney General's office appealed that ruling, and what happened yesterday is the Federal Appeals Court decided to stay McGlynn's ruling from November 8, which means that the assault weapons ban is going to continue to be the law of the ban is going to continue to be the law of the land in the state of Illinois as the Seventh Circuit, considers the case and hears, the back and forth debating probably, for the next several months between the state and these gun rights groups. Um, there's been some thought that what could ultimately happen here, we'll see what happens. This could be a case that ultimately goes before the U.S. Supreme Court, but I mean, it's obviously too early to determine that. But you know, we're about 2 years into this law, since the law was passed, and since January 2023, ever since Governor Pritzker signed this into law, there's been legal wrangling that doesn't appear to be ending anytime soon. So stay tuned. The case is basically going to be in the Seventh Circuit for the time being, and I'm sure eventually there'll be oral arguments between the Attorney General's office's attorneys and the gun rights groups.
Gotcha. And before I let you go, it's if I understand correctly, the ban was going to become unenforceable on the 8th, December 8th,
You
a
got it.
month
Yeah.
from that order, but
Yep.
this stay has extended it for
Indefinitely.
indefinitely
It's
until
a, it's
the
it's
until the
until the Seventh Circuit, basically hears both sides.
okay.
Um, and then I'm sure eventually there'll be oral arguments over this, and then the Seventh Circuit will eventually come out with a ruling. So we'll see, we'll see what happens there. I mean, if we looked at past practice, last year the Seventh Circuit in a 2-1 vote ruled in favor of the state. Um, you know, basically keeping the law intact, but also noting, hey, this this was only the preliminary injunction phase, right?
Mm.
This was a call to temporarily block the enforcement of the law. Um, so indicating that they were still open to fully considering the constitutionality of whether one's constitutional rights were violated once the case is heard on its merits. And that's what we've seen in McGlynn's courtroom over the last several months, is that there was a trial in September for a trial on the case's merits, which basically what that means is,
Yeah.
unlike a preliminary injunction, which was last year, now lawyers are at the stage where they've come up with a lot of discovery. They've come up with each side has come up with witnesses to try to refute the other side. And basically, the stage that lawyers from each side are on now is that they're going to be arguing for either, if you're Kwame Raoul's staff, keeping the law permanently in place in Illinois, or if you're the gun rights group, basically eliminating the law from, state statute. So that's kind of where we're at now. And depending on how, the Seventh Circuit handles this case, we'll have to stay tuned because, there is a possibility that because of all this legal wrangling, it could end up before the U.S. Supreme Court. But we'll see.
Yeah. Quick last question for you before I let you go. Are those, I was able to watch, like, for example, the recent Illinois Supreme Court case on the issue of cannabis odor. I know that's a completely separate topic. But I was going to ask you, are those like Seventh Circuit Court hearings, for example? Do you know, are they like streamed anywhere, or do we have that in Illinois? I've been trying to figure that out,
Well,
like
the
which court.
cannabis, yeah, yeah. So the cannabis case, this was about like, um, how the smell of raw
Right.
cannabis is ground for police to search a vehicle.
Right.
Yeah, that was through the Illinois Supreme Court. So
Right, right.
that was a state lawsuit, and those are live streamed. Um, Seventh Circuit, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
If that's live stream. I mean, that's something that one can easily find out, I think, by calling the Northern District of
Sure.
Illinois.
Cool.
But because I'm less familiar with hearings before the Seventh Circuit, I know the state Supreme Court definitely they are.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. Well, just curious because I always think it's interesting when things like that are live streamed. There was just another federal marijuana case the actually yesterday whenever that ruling came out on raw cannabis. I'm getting my dates mixed up. I think that was yesterday. The
Yes.
fourth.
Yeah.
So anyways, I was only asking because, like I say, it's always cool when you can watch those things back on like YouTube or whatever. So,
Yeah,
all
I
right.
mean, what I'll say is in federal court, it really depends on. I think it might depend on the judge, but no, usually federal court, I have not heard of cases that are like live streamed. I mean, you'll see that in state court, but
Yeah, is
federal court,
is Madigan in federal court right now?
it is. Yeah, and that is
Because I
not.
know some of your colleagues, like they're doing a great job of
Yeah,
tweeting and posting different, materials from it,
right.
which like makes you feel, so it allows you to feel like you're there. But I was figuring, yeah, they're probably not live streaming that either.
Well, I
So,
mean, like you and I, if we're not covering the trial, can't, watch it basically, unless
mm,
we're there. So,
ah,
in
yeah,
my understanding, yeah.
makes
So,
sense. Cool.
yeah.
Well,
Federal rules are a little different than the state rules when it comes to the courts in our country. So, yeah.
yeah. Well, Jeremy, maybe I'll see you in Springfield next session. The cannabis advocates and the hemp advocates, they're saying they may show up, which means you may see me there.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll maybe stop by and say
Please,
hi.
please do. Yeah, that'd be great.
So, well, I want to thank you again for your time. And folks, I hope you found value in this little update on the PICA Act. I'm sure we'll talk to Jeremy again in the future. Jeremy, just as always, wanted to thank you for the work that you do.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Cole. Likewise.
Yep. Take care, everybody.
Take care.
If you want to read Jeremy's coverage on this subject, I linked his latest story in the show notes. I also wanted to remind you that the Cole Memo is brought to you by listeners like you. One of the best ways to support my work is absolutely free. Subscribe to the podcast on your preferred platform, leave a positive rating, and share it with your friends. Your engagement helps make the show more visible to others. If you'd like to support the show financially, consider becoming a patron at colememo.com/Patreon for exclusive access to new episodes as they release. Or you can make a direct contribution of your choice at colememo.com/support. Thanks for listening.